My name is Adelle A'Asante, and I live in Halifax. Halifax has been my home the past 10 years. And it's important to also say that I spent about 6 years of my adult life at the university learning about the anatomy and the physiology of the human eye. So by profession, I'm an optometrist, but all this was going to change. It was going to change when I began my mothering journey. One day, my son, just at the age of 3, will come back from nursery and say, "I'm the only brown boy in nursery." And that got me thinking. I grew up in Ghana, West Africa, where clearly I was not the only brown girl in nursery. What did it mean to be the only brown boy? What was the story the world was telling about the only brown boy? I wanted to know. And that day, it seemed as though my son was summoning me, giving me an invitation to a place I like to call the awareness of awareness. And when I did, I realized that he was trying to communicate to me the stark absence of presence, identity, and representation at his nursery, even at that young age. And that night, I would tell him a story my grandmother told me, the story of Ese, the Tachema, the teeth and the tongue. The moral of that story, the teeth and the tongue, they don't look the same. They perform different functions in the body. It is not always an amicable relationship. Sometimes teeth will bite tongue, sometimes tongue will push against teeth. But however the story goes, teeth and tongue, they've got to learn to live amicably. Why? Because human body has got to talk and drink and eat. Human body hasn't got time for bickering. So teeth and tongue have got to learn to live together. And that night I told my son, in growing up language, we call that unity in diversity. But it did not stop there. I was intrigued, I wanted to know more, and so it led to further conversations with my network of migrant moms. What stories are your children bringing home? Storytelling is how you answer the simple question, what is your name, or how are you? So let's go and tell stories. And from there, I think my life trajectory changed to a place where I now probably identify myself as a lived experience storyteller. But for me, it's also a sacred privilege where we tell these stories as a tool for social change and social justice. So quite often, I would introduce myself as lived experience storyteller, and we're here to use diverse forms of creativity as a tool for social cohesion. What if the stories we were telling could come alive? What would they look like? How heavy would these stories be if we could hold them? What if we could see the story? What if we could smell it? What if we could eat the story and taste it? What would it be like? And so I've been on a long journey looking for spaces where I could have some time to experiment. What if the stories could come alive? And it was that led me to the New Creatives journey. For me, it was a very timely opportunity when I saw this, the call out. And I thought, why not put an application? But we have so many stories. So which story was coming with me on this journey? And somewhere in Halifax, when you stand on a platform, when you lift your head, is a brightly colored billboard that screams out to you, Quality Street, proudly made in Halifax since 1936. And quite often I look around on platform and I'm thinking, what are the others thinking? Because for me, this is deeply entrenched and intertwines with my story in many, many ways. And my grandmother, not only was she a storyteller, my grandmother, Kusi Onyamakan, was also a cocoa farmer. 4 countries in West Africa, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Cameroon, right now in our world produce nearly 70% of the world's cocoa beans. You take a country like Ghana, Ghana consumes less than 1% of the cocoa beans it produces. In the UK, people here consume approximately 90 million Easter eggs just for Easter and Easter only. The chocolate and confectionery industry, experts will describe it as an hourglass that is tipped on its side. So you have these many farmers, cultivators on one side, and ferocious chocolate consumers. Some of them will even describe themselves as chocoholic on this side. However, because this hourglass is tipped on its side, there's no interaction. So cocoa farmers have no idea what happens on the other side, and the consumers neither. What happens to our beans when it leaves our farm? And that led us on a journey to begin this life-affirming work we do with Chocolate Has a Name, because it does. What we wanted to do was answer that question to the children, but also use creativity as a tool to bring those worlds together, is what brought me to this place to apply for this program and to be here and finally see what the story will look like if it came alive. So this program really was my dreaming process, to carve out that time to dream and to say, what is this new world that I wish to see? And also, how does this go a long way to affect people's places, spaces whose stories have not been represented at Platform 1, you know. When you see that sign, Quality Street proudly made in Halifax, it is a proud story. But as always in this country, have found our stories are told in parts. On this journey, I have been incredibly supported, and part of the discovery I'm making is perhaps because I like art. Art for me, I've come to know it, was not confined to a studio space. The basket weavers in Accra, they weave under the trees at Tetekwashi. And all the passers-by have a right to stop and criticize and contribute to this art, which they have no idea where it is going. It is even difficult to call it art because it's life. They are weaving basket that is going to serve a purpose. The porters, the carvers, they don't work in studios and they open it. So it's an invitation for all of community to come and contribute to this, whether you're an expert or not. Yeah, so this is the art I've known, and coming on this program, one of the things I've realized that, oh, there's actually a word for that called commoning. So perhaps I want to do a lot of commoning. And I've had the chance to also work with mentors. I work with Mishka, who has been incredible in understanding what I carry, what I bring for me, which is really important. Understanding what we carry also means that people appreciate how we're walking. Mentoring was quite critical in understanding what I was bringing and how I was hoping to develop and grow that. I also had the chance of working with other members of Everyday Arts, a curator. I've been gathering and curating stories, how I knew, but it was good to finally meet a professional curator and how they do things. But most importantly, volunteers. I loved working with the volunteers because these were absolute strangers who now became a part of my story, which is how I know art to be. It's quite often it's difficult for me to say my exhibition is our exhibition. And to also know that the installation has come from a community of people who are not physically represented here, but their labors are represented here. And also what we wish to bring in terms of our new ones for sustainability and challenging the mainstream narrative of what sustainability is. I think that being on the program, everyone has contributed to this growth and the success, from mentorship, from Harriet to manage the program, artistic and creative director, who also supported immensely with shaping the whole exhibition. It was an invitation for everyone to come and add their own story or find their thread in the story in which we were weaving. Because some of my future hopes and dreams is to go into other art forms. And I was able to get inspiration from Rosie, who does work with sculpting, and I think she does a bit of ceramic works as well, and then Matt, who does pottery. It's been amazing. I had the chance to also do children's workshop with Sarah Boyle, and Sarah helped me to introduce myself to my higher self, because I've been doing children's workshop for a very long time, but she brought another strand to it, which I found really interesting. So I have loved it. And for me, that has always been my measure of growth, to find myself in a place where I'm also challenged to constantly introduce myself to my higher self, which quite often is not very comfortable quite often. But I found that I have seen growth, and I've just loved the journey. Everyone has supported in every way, and I'm just thankful to the team, for their support. This year is called Adele's Year of Culture, and I'm really thankful that we have been, as an organization, we have been commissioned to hold and share the Chocolate Has a Name Festival, which is amazing. It's one of its kind. It's never happened before. Obviously, there have been a lot of chocolate festivals, but this will be the first time a chocolate festival will have a cocoa farmer, a cocoa carrier, people whose stories are unheard, unknown, untold in the value chain. These are very interesting couple of months ahead of us, and we're dreaming big. We're doing everything possible to share the festival with the rest of Adele and beyond, and hopefully inviting people to a place where we call the wells of reparations. If we know that the story is broken, how do we repair? How do we renew, realign, return, and reimagine the world that we hope to see? I think the New Creative Program is a brilliant program, and I hope that it continues. For me, as someone who was trying to still navigate this art space, find myself, I sort of knew what I wanted to do. I think what the New Creative did was to give me the space and the time to reflect. And when I was asked to draw my program, I will always say, Mondays are when I will do my contemplation. To be given the space and the time to dream, to think, to contemplate, I think is really rare an opportunity. So for me, that really went well. There were no expectations. We have put together an exhibition. 2 of us were in the cohort, but there were no expectations, which I think is brilliant. So it gives you the freedom to move in and flow in this dream and this way you want to tell your story and how you wish to, the output to the world, what you're trying to communicate. It gave us that freedom to do that. But I also came in with that specific agenda of experimenting. What will these stories look like here? So for me, that was brilliant. They came with an understanding as well of our commitment and to leave us to make these goals that we were going to move in a way to achieve it. So in so many ways, I love that about the project, the freedom it gave me to move and execute this dream how I wanted to. Perhaps in the future, what we can do to improve this program, I believe, will be putting some budget aside for an output. An output was not intended, but we had an output in mind for which there was no budget. So I would ask that if a budget is assigned for an output, it will help a great deal. When you sit with a problem, you smell the problem, you wear the problem, you eat the problem, you don't wait for funders to fund you. You do what you need to do to solve that problem. But it would be great to have some funding and budgets set aside for an output if artists want to deliver an output at the end of the New Creatives program. I was very intentional as well being here to bring in a lot of community, and it's not as though community is not interested in the art, it's not as though community is not interested in gallery works. How are we bringing them in? And for me, that's a lot of learnings that I hope that I have afforded everybody else to reflect on moving forward. Halifax says refugees are welcome here, and a lot of our families who find themselves within that space of refugee and asylum seeking have stories to tell. How do we engage them in programs like this? How do we even create spaces for us to dream? Because we won't be refugees and asylum seekers forever. I hope that the New Creatives program is here to stay, because I'm going away with a wealth of knowledge of what projects I want to do hereafter and thereafter and thereafter. And I see the potential of collaboration, people whose work I'm drawn to, people who seem to understand what we hold and carry. For anybody who is thinking to apply, I just say apply, because the program is just amazing in every way. To access space, to access expertise, people with a technical know-how, people to support you on the journey, I believe is rare, and be paid for that space and that time, I think is rare indeed in a very, very competitive funding ecosystem. I honestly hope that for every cohort, the program is refined to its finest, to be able to get new artists or people who are anywhere in their creative career who need that space and time to come and build on and flourish. Our story will always be a shared story, but most importantly, our shared humanity. the story is not going to be one way, and it has to be very nuanced and very diverse. And I feel this is what new creative will bring into the landscape.